So welcome to those that are listening this evening. This is the Town of Amherst Agricultural and Farmland Protection Plan Advisory Committee. The meeting will be recorded. So, but we hope to encourage open discussion. The agenda this evening will be project status, the public meeting, the format and the approach, discussion of the draft plan, the focus on Chapter 7 implementation and other comments, and then other open discussion, and then at the end, a kind of a closing comment. So with that, I will turn it over to Leanne.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for taking time again tonight. Busy schedules, I know, especially in this warmer, beautiful weather. So I just wanted to start off, kind of give you a project status update. We did receive and really talk about the dates, right? We have received confirmation from the county that the ag meeting will be held June 24th. So we will be looking to submit this to the Erie County Ag group on June 10th. And between that time, we do have some flexibility on some of our dates, but we would be looking different things that we would need to have happen during that time. Wendell's team will be making revisions and finalizing the overall plan. The town will be working directly with you to make sure that you're getting a final review. We also will need to have a public meeting, get a final draft to the state, get it into the county, and then we're really, at finalization point. And our drop dead date is 7/31. We have to have the closeout documents and the final report to the state. So we're still a little flexible in there, trying to figure out some last minute items, but we are on track to submit to the county by June 10th. So that's that item there. Along that same note, well, I guess one other item with this is we want you guys to understand a little bit of where we are in the actual process of the report. You guys have seen drafts separately of all of the sections so far. It's just text at this point. We do want to clarify that for everybody, and we will be looking to add images and graphics and make it look a much nicer, concise document. And I'm going to ask, I'll send this out via email, but I'd love if you guys could send email pictures of ag activities throughout the town. We don't have direct access to those, but I'm sure everybody on this call has access to photos from the market, anything in the field, equipment, just cool pictures of a sunrise or a sunset over the fields, just anything that's about Amherst Ag and the activities, even from the classes that we might hold at different facilities. So we're really asking everybody, all hands on deck, to send us many pictures as you want. So you can send those. Why don't you just go directly to me, or if you feel that you have a lot, I can set up a Dropbox link. But if you just coordinate that through me, that would be great if we could get some of that going. So then on to one of the important items tonight is a discussion of our public meeting. So when we last met, we brought up the fact that a public meeting is required before we submit this to the state. It doesn't have to be a public hearing. It's just a meeting where we're presenting this to the public. Now we've already, we've got the website, we've done, the survey outreach, and there's been, I think we've had some articles that have gone out. So there has been outreach, but we really need to kind of get the word out for where we're heading, what the goals and implementation look like. So we discussed at the last meeting that we threw out an idea of meeting during a work session of the town board and doing a 15-minute presentation, and that would count as our public meeting. So we've had some back and forth. There's that option. We wanted to talk to you all about your thoughts, put it all out there. I know Roberta and Dan have had separate conversations on this matter. So I just wanted to, I guess, open it up. Roberta, did you have anything you wanted to offer on that subject?
Well, I do know that I did ask, I did have some correspondence with Jeff Kehoe at the state, and the timing is a little off. We would be able to do like a town board work session no earlier than May 17th. And he was hoping to have the document before that time. And we will have to hold the public meeting before he gets the document. So there's that conflict, where we could, if we did it on the 17th, he wouldn't get the document until probably the 20th or the 18th at the earliest, and that's really pushing it. But so he was a little concerned about that. Not a direct no, but not an enthusiastic yes.
So Roberta, why do we have to wait to the 17th to get on the town board agenda?
Well, we still have some revisions to make. I don't know, actually, we might be able to get, I mean, it's already April 8th. I know we've missed one already. There's only one more to go.
Roberta, I think, the conversation, Bob, goes beyond that. I'm not sure that meets the intent. So I think it's meant to be some kind of public engagement that's not on a time basis. And allows for folks to hear about the plan and then express some thoughts about it.
Okay,
Right,
and so then how do we promote that to get some interest? That's the challenge you have. You got to have a draw.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, and counter to that, we have not historically, and Ellen and Wendy, I know, can speak to this. Ag plans don't bring out a lot of people. Usually you get most of your input and your interest from those that are already involved in the committee and those who have already answered the surveys. So we don't tend to see a lot of pull from the community, even if you're advertising. And I know Wendy and Ellen could speak to that a little bit more, but that's what we've seen.
And that's the concern. So we got to figure something out so that, I mean, I don't know what you'd like to have. Obviously, you'd like to have as many as possible, but in today's world, and people are busy, and some don't even like Zoom meetings, and there's just infinite reasons why it's difficult to get people together anymore. So you need to attach your wagon to something where you can pull it together.
So I think we define the time frame here, and then we'll work on the concept. And I suspect it may end up being something more of a hybrid, where we might have some stuff available on the website and elicit some comments that way. We could have a Zoom meeting, and maybe there's some other way to do it, but the intent is not to just kind of check the block and go. So I'd like to give that a little more thought. If we can get a time frame out of tonight's meeting, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and
A time frame to what, Dan? I'm not clear when you say a time frame to what? In other words, you want to set a date tonight as to when this meeting is going to be, or a tentative date?
Set a date certain or a window, a couple day window when we can kind of work through and figure out how we're going to do it and conduct the meeting then.
Okay, so let's do it right now.
Well, to that, yes, Bob. I was working with the calendar, trying to figure out, today's the 8th. We're going to be going through some material, and then we could possibly do a public meeting on the 27th of April. That would be enough time to get any comments back before May 3rd or the early May 10th to get to Jeff Kehoe.
Okay.
So it'd be that.
I guess
So kind of back into, in order to comply with the timeframes that other people need to process this, let's work back from that. And does that work then, Roberta?
Well, right, that's what I did. I had a date of, say, between May 3rd and May 10th to give submit the document to Jeff Kehoe at the state, back that up so we have time to actually do any revisions that would come from the public meeting, and then put the public meeting at the 27th. So the week of the April 27th would be like as far back as we could go.
All right.
Or as early as we could go. Sorry, as early as we could go.
So I guess my first impression is that seems like something doable, but I don't know, again, what your and Dan's thoughts are. Maybe that's something you guys, sidebar on, and then kind of work to that date, though, if that's possible. It's a few weeks out, so.
Yeah.
I'd like to work with the team and sidebar with Roberta and Dan and talk about actual dates, because I want to push back a little bit on Kehoe. On Kehoe's out of town until the 13th. So I want to push back a little bit on his dates, but we can take that offline. I don't want to bog the committee meeting
Sounds
down
good.
with that
Sounds
tonight.
good.
So
That's fine.
That's
we'll
perfect.
work with Roberta and
And
All
then-
right,
Danny.
so then,
End of April,
Hold on,
early
Ellen.
May sounds like a window.
so then the
Yeah.
from our perspective tonight then is, you know, it looks like the earliest possibility is the 27th, and then somewhere, if not somewhere there around there then, right?
Yeah, the
And so
earliest
it's-
would be that, yeah.
And
Okay.
it will
so,
be its own event, whether it's a webinar.
As long as you can promote it to get people there. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
I'm
it's
just
not
saying
gonna
that,
be a
you know,
town-
if you get 5 people there, what have you accomplished?
but
so
it's not
that's-
gonna be
that's the goal.
attached to- Not
the goal.
attached to town board meeting.
Okay,
mean.
I,
Yeah.
you know, whatever you're good at with, it's just, you gotta be able to draw folks to it. That's all.
Yeah, that's gonna be a challenge.
No, I
we'll-
agree with
we'll-
that, Bob. I do.
We'll work on that.
But we'll have to
Yep.
figure something out. Yeah.
We'll do the
Okay.
best we can to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Now, an option
40
might
acres and a
be,
mule.
let me push this out as an option. We could do kind of a webinar that you post on the website too. Then it's more
I mean, how do you
Yeah,
get
we-
feedback?
static.
Record
But-
something and leave it up there for a couple days or so.
And,
Yeah,
and,
so we'll
and
figure
leave the
that out.
avenue for people to comment on it?
Right.
Yeah.
There would be an
Okay.
avenue for people to come in.
That's possible. Again, but you gotta draw people to it.
Yep.
No, without the doubt.
Because the demographic that you may be attracting to this may not be as well versed in technology as you think. That's all.
Oh, look, I want to back up. So the intent here is to try to get some public input on the draft plan in time for the state to have some level of comfort that an attempt was made to elicit commentary. I've said this before, you know, the folks that are on this committee, to me, represent in some ways, in a lot of ways, the public. And then certainly the people that are engaged in this and interested in it. It's not complete, but it is a group of people that represent those perspectives. That said, you know, we'll do our best to try and get folks to participate in this. And then I'll just remind people that this has to go before the town board, which would be a public hearing, which will be advertised and so on and so forth. So, you know, it's not the final word here. We do the best we can to get the draft document in shape and move on down the road.
And Dan, I think that's a great point. And I think that's the best way to approach it. And then if whomever you get as additional comments from it, you certainly have, you know, the draft of what everyone else has commented on so far. So combining the two together might be sufficient.
You know, I can't leave Wendell hanging out there, you know,
no.
making changes every day.
This has got to be
So
done.
we're gonna do this in a
Agree.
structured form, but
It's got to be done.
Yep.
That's right. I think
And
it's a
it
great,
doesn't
I
have
think
to
it's a
be
good
a-
plan.
Doesn't have to be pristine, the document for reaching public input, because obviously we
Right.
would be changing it after that too.
Sure.
So,
Just so we can keep it moving. Sounds good. All
Okay.
right. So you know what, from a public meeting perspective, as far as that and some dates, you got what you need.
yes.
Excellent.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, we want to just get your feedback on the draft plan, particularly section 7. I know that the town planning office is going to be reaching out to you separately, comments on the other section. First of all, chapter 1 you received also was an intro. I'm expecting that any comments on that would be more wordsmithing and not substantive, unless there's something major anybody wants to mention about chapter 1. We'll move on to chapter 7. Okay, we organized chapter 7 as a matrix around the goals, and some of those recommendations from chapter 5 and 6 that were the recommendations ended up in that. This is a kind of a skinny down version of what you have, but it's the same content. So we start out with the number 1 thing the town has to do is adopt the plan so that it's an official document that the town is implementing. Want to post the plan so that there's public knowledge of what is in it and that education piece to it. The third thing we think is very important is that you establish an ongoing standing committee that is in charge of agricultural affairs. I abbreviated it here, the Agriculture and Farmland Advisory Committee. It can be this committee. It doesn't have to be the exact makeup, but there needs to be some sort of entity that is the ownership of this plan. Also, since the fourth one is this right to farm law, we recommend that the town pass. Part of that is that you need a mediating board for any conflicts that do arise in regard to farmer, non-farmer conflicts. So that committee would also serve that role. Moving on, encourage farm owners to stay in the ag district so that you don't have people leaving the district. To the extent you can, that it makes sense, increase participation in the ag district program. That's town working with the county on that action. The next item was getting into the zoning recommendations that were written up in chapter 5.
Hey, Alan, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So the one that you mentioned before, the 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down. Oh, okay.
Right to farm.
The 2 down from there, the one where it says AG district, does that refer to the zoning district AG?
Zoning
Or
district,
an ag district as per the county?
the zoning district.
Okay,
These are this next grouping of recommendations are pertaining to those zoning changes that we recommended in chapter 5.
okay.
So the permitted uses, need to take a careful look at that, make sure that you have the right permitted uses, particularly those uses for the agricultural innovation and economic development that Victoria talked about in chapter 6. Some of those wouldn't be allowed necessarily if you were strictly interpreting your current zoning. We really believe as the opportunity arises, the town should be rezoning lands to the AG and RR zoning districts.
Can I ask what as the opportunity arises means?
Well, we're getting kind of, certainly I would start with the lands that have conservation easements on them already because they won't be developed. So the loss of that change in terms of development potential wouldn't be an issue with those owners. So I would start with them. Any owners that are interested, I think the town has talked about waiving the fees for rezoning if you rezone to one of these 2 districts. That's really for the planning department to take the lead on encouragement, but I'm hearing that we're not saying we're going to go through with the town initiating zoning. That was what I was hearing in the last meeting.
Can I
If I'm wrong, let me know.
interrupt for a moment here? The last meeting, it was said the only way to really protect farmland is to remove the development rights, and I believe that is correct. When this opportunity arises, will the town encourage these people, or will the town participate with a share of financing to get that land, purchase those development rights?
Yes, that's that's the next group of next goal 2. We get into that in more detail in goal 2.
Okay,
So hold that thought and see if it's adequate enough when we get to goal 2.
So, but I think this is not as maybe suggesting as much proactive action on the part of the town, right? Like it's kind of like, okay, well, we'll do it as the opportunity arises, and maybe it needs to be a little bit stronger.
We were hearing mixed messages. So if you're willing to be proactive and do it, then that's what our preference would be, that the town actually initiates a program where you would rezone.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, but I think if you pose it that way,
Yeah.
it can be assessed in that manner, and we'll see what the
Okay.
town wants to do.
So with your comments on this, make that comment on there and we'll make sure that that gets strengthened.
Done.
Okay. Another zoning is dealing with the zoning for small scale or hobby farms and non-commercial agricultural uses. The animals law needs to be updated. There's conflicting how many horses you can have, where you can have the horses and other animals, chickens, those kinds of things. So that needs to be looked at. Definitions. regulations for farm stands. So those are the zoning recommendations. Any other discussion on, and we discussed this, the bulk of the recommendations in the last meeting. So there's nothing new here. It's just the nuances of what we've been discussing.
I just have one statement or question. It might actually be to Dan Howard, honestly. I'm not sure if it's something for the adopting regulations for small farm stands and operations on properties in AG and RR, since we don't have any mapped for those, could we adopt some regulations under the SA zoning for that in the interim?
I'm not sure I understand what
Yes.
you're asking.
Well, we could add more uses or some more flexibility under SA to allow for these small farm stands and operations on the properties that are zoned currently SA that would be farms or qualify for such things that aren't yet zoned to AG or RR.
Roberta, this is Wendy.
Hi.
I would not support that.
Yeah.
Okay.
My concern with doing something like that is then it will be less of an incentive for people to want to give up SA to go to the zones we really want them to be. Because they're going to, why should I go if you keep
Makes
making
sense.
SA better?
Right.
So no, I would
get that.
not do
Perfect.
anything.
Well, I
Okay.
think too, there's SA zoning all over the town.
Right, exactly.
And
I
Oh,
knew
that
that.
too.
can't
Yeah,
sit
that
here
too.
and say one place is, okay, but someplace else is not. That
Right.
would require some thought. I think to Wendy's point, I think we ought to be trying to get away from SA.
Exactly, yeah.
And so to try and adjust it so it fits some need that hopefully would be temporary is probably not as productive as just driving on with the intent to change it.
Plus, like you said, we do want to be proactive in getting those zonings changed, so that
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, thank you.
That's a good incentive to switch.
Okay.
The next ones are kind of more procedural, policy of making sure that you're following appropriate process in terms of ag data statements, supporting local farm markets, working with Erie County and the other surrounding towns on these types of issues of ag protection and ag encouragement. And then getting the word out about the programs that are available, the last three, the American Farmland Trust programs, the USDA programs, Cornell Cooperative Extension, Cornell Outreach, the Small Farms Program, Erie County programs. So that's more of just education, outreach, and policy. Okay, any questions on the concepts for goal one? Anything you think we missed? Okay, we're gonna keep moving. Here's goal two, conservation easements, protecting important soils. Given the way Amherst works, we agree one of the most effective tools is going to be actual outright purchase of conservation easements to permanently protect these lands, because there is enough development pressures in the town. So work with the Western New York Lands Conservancy to purchase development rights on key parcels, and there is a map of targeted parcels that will be included in the plan. Continue to seek funding from ag and markets for conservation easements. Encouragement to farmers to enter into this program. Outreach to the farmers to educate them about the PACE program. And then installing right to farm laws, signs. I'm not sure that belongs in this category, but we should, if you adopt a right to farm law, let people know that it is a right to farm community. And then use this committee to help serve as that mediating board for conflicts between farmers and non-farmers, which is on the next page. Is the first one.
So key parcels, suggest here have been identified for protection. Is there an active, aggressive outreach to the people who own those parcels that they should get into the program, and why?
I don't think
Not
there's
recently.
been any effort lately, Rick.
No.
And I honestly think one of the first things we need to do is go back and look at that map and reevaluate the map, see where we stand with it. Maybe there's other properties that should be included. Maybe there's a reason some of the ones that were identified years ago may not be, something we want to pursue. So I think we need to do a review of that map. In fact, we probably
We
should
should
have done
add,
it within
should we
this-
add that as an action? Should we add that as an action?
The only,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, definitely.
so we're saying educate people about it, reach out to targeted parcels, make sure you have the right targeted parcels,
Yeah, review
and
the
seek funding from the state for these. Is that, so pretty aggressive
Yeah.
conservation easement
program.
strategies.
Mhm.
Any questions on this one?
so two things came to mind when I was looking at this. One is, and I don't know if this is the right category, but we talked about the wetland growth in North Amherst and how it might affect agricultural lands. Not quite sure how we would do that, but it actually does concern me a little bit because, if we allow wetlands to grow into these areas that might have productive agricultural lands, we're essentially saying, go ahead, be a wetland. We're not looking to farm it. It might be more difficult for somebody to farm. You got to deal with regulatory issues. So I don't know, but I think it seems like there ought to be some effort to think about that a little bit. And whether there's some effort the town might undertake to ensure that, the wetland areas that are out there are protected, but maybe don't expand into valued agricultural lands. The other thing that doesn't seem to be addressed here is the solar situation. I can't remember if it came further down the line here. I don't know, again, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it, but the question of solar is one that, I know we weren't going to get into it real deeply here, but we probably ought to provide some guidance or some suggested direction out of this to take that up on a more
That was one of
detailed
my
basis.
comments.
Okay. Okay. We can work with you offline on that.
We held a public hearing for the IDA this morning on a 22-acre solar on Shoals.
Yep.
And it's been passed along for full board likely approval later this month. A lot of that stuff's driven by NYSERDA, state rules that really all we're doing is administering the thing. Because again, the state trumps us on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, you have a limited just jurisdiction on this, the way they've structured that.
Yeah, mostly community solar. Level or less, yeah,
Right. Anything larger is not even coming to the town really.
no.
Okay, any other comments on this goal? Okay, I'm gonna get up for just a minute because now I do need to have my light on in here. 1 second, I'll be right there.
Ellen or Leanne, the goal number 2 talks about protecting key areas of viable farmland. I was just thinking, it's areas, but is it other, I'm not sure what these would be, but other agricultural resources or valued resources to agriculture?
Yeah, we could tweak that.
Yeah, I was definitely going to mention that one of the goals had to me to be wordsmithed a little bit because they sounded similar or not quite clear or distinct.
Now, the first one is ag lands. The second one is that conservation easements concept.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know if it has to be exclusively that or.
No, but it was just a recognition that some of the protection that you're going to be doing. If you're in Eden, the protection is by strengthening the economic value of farming and protecting it from inappropriate land policies. Here, you'd want to do that, but I think you need a little bit more handing out the cash to help it be economically viable. Okay, goal 3, this is the economic oriented goal. I'll go through it. Victoria, feel free to chime in if I have mangled anything. Number 1 is an ag specific business retention and expansion program. The IDA does a great job with Main Street type businesses, a little less up to speed with what the needs of ag specifically are. So working with the economic development people in the town and possibly actually kind of doing further study, look at what is needed to support ag businesses, what their specific needs are. The next one is creating a clearinghouse of information for people that are interested in getting into new areas of ag businesses, training, funding, where available markets are. Create a website to have as part of that clearinghouse and part of that outreach to existing farmers, potential farmers about what the opportunities are. And then creating this ally and partner management plan, kind of setting forth what the roles are of the entities involved with trying to do a more economic development oriented programs, getting into new markets, or what programs and supports that you need. The next one, raising the profile of the farming economy, because the census of ag does things at a county level or a zip code level. There's nothing that's collected at the town level. And it's hard to know what your needs are if you don't have the data. So this is kind of taking a more proactive approach to collecting data so that you have some metrics on how your ag sector is doing. The next one is, you are doing that economic development study, make sure that ag is an element in that and taken into consideration, not only in that study, but in other economic studies for the town, kind of a more conscious recognition of the importance of agriculture as an industry, as opposed to just a land use. Next page, promoting an Eat Local campaign so that you're creating markets for locally produced foods. Targeted online meetings for Amherst stakeholders, such as basically online training options available, making them more accessible. Encouraging farming interests to take advantage of the programs. This is kind of a repeat of one that was mentioned in one, but in that one, it was more in terms of ag practices. This is more on that economic development angle of ag-related businesses. Make sure farmers are aware of and taking advantage of the available tax relief programs and environmental management programs. Taking advantage of new markets and helping with them in transitioning to new markets as they arise, say organic farming or crop diversification, so that they keep economically viable. Encouraging them to take advantage of the business management and financial planning courses that are available out there. Also, the availability of the climate resiliency farming program that the Soil and Water Conservation District has. American Farmland Trust program on connecting new farmers to available lands. The Cornell University Small Farm programs. These are just kind of a reminder of these programs that were listed in Chapter 5 that make them increase the outreach about their availability. Work with Erie County and Cornell Extensive cooperative extension, on farm stands, farm markets. And then the last one under this one is looking more specifically at hemp and cannabis. I'm not going to be able to pronounce cannabis products. Resources, gaps, opportunities, what would be needed to get into it? How does Amherst fit into those constellations of what those needs are and what you would need to do to try to promote that as an industry in the town?
And I'll suggest that we've got someone who's not on the call tonight, but has been as part of this committee, who's probably the largest farmer in the Erie County. Someone should have contacted him. Someone should contact them. He can give them all kinds of information.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think that Victoria did talk to him.
No one's talked to him.
No one's
I tried, but like so many of the farmers in town, he's been extremely busy, and even beyond what he knows, though, this points to taking his knowledge, talking to him when his schedule does permit, absolutely, but also going beyond that and using his information to look at more deeper markets and resources.
Do we need to try and facilitate that conversation more effectively just before we finish this up, or do we think we've got the recommendation is enough?
I would stand on this recommendation. What I mean by industry study is really a target industry study that would look at, workforce and the industry itself, as well as the potential impact locally and the potential for continued innovation and cooperation with other industries. And we've talked with Mayor Culpa a little bit about this, what could go into such a study. And it's beyond the scope of the ag plan itself. It could be a great CFA project if that makes sense for the town.
Okay.
There are two things that I would like to underscore what Ellen shared, and don't need to roll up. One is the suggestion to have a partner management plan. And this is something that can be very, very important. There are a lot of initiatives and moving parts here. So keeping track of how people are performing, how they are acting as partners, and making sure that there's a central way of knowing that they're doing what they were asked, that they can come for information and advice, and especially to know when they have actually done what they were asked. Sometimes, as you all know, in communities, joining a committee, entering into an initiative can feel very open-ended, and that can keep some people away. A partner management plan can be a tool to reassure that they're doing a good job and they're doing what is asked. And more briefly, the second thing I wanted to point out is that the targeted video workshops, in addition to the training that Ellen mentioned, are to encourage, to let participants know of all of the resources that are listed below that. There are many programs, and through my interviews, it was clear that because those are dispersed, throughout the internet and throughout the region and nationally, not everyone knew about all of the programs. So bundling together and say, here is this whole library of resources, and we're going to talk to you about some of them, will encourage those connections that you want to see happen.
Okay, thank you. I knew I was butchering those two.
No, you did a great job, but you didn't write them.
Yeah. Okay, so any other comments on the economic development specific goal?
I just had one, if we could real quick.
Sure.
With promoting the economic innovation, one thing I don't see on here, and I don't know if it needs to be put on, would be, utilizing the already established social media that the town and other businesses might have. I know like the third recommendation down talks about a website, and that's fine, but I feel like that might be a little passive as far as promoting things. So maybe coupled with that, or it could be added in or something like that. Because I know like business to business wise, you know, we won't be seeking out a website to find everything, but I think if something is kind of like posted and things that people are already like looking at, especially the public, I feel like if it's linked to the website, that would help drive it a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that that's a good add to not just be the passive website, but to have that social media component to it.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we're going to move on to goal 4. And if you have specific detailed comments, make sure you get them to Roberta. This is just to get agreement on the conceptual framework here. So the 4th one is aimed at agritourism as opposed to the more agricultural economic development. It's still economically based, but it's that tourism element to it. So establish a temporary committee to oversee this specific initiative of agritourism. Have the temporary committee reach out to organizations and make sure we have a good understanding of what the regional and local assets are that make up this agritourism inventory. Work with the regional promotions happening, such as Erie Grown Passport, which is kind of a cool little thing. Farmers market checkoff box, so that you make sure that the town venues that should be in that are in that. Kind of drive visitors to these locations. Continue to work with Buffalo Niagara Heritage Village with the programs and programming and initiatives that they're undertaking. And then connect agricultural and tourism businesses with business support resources. This is kind of a parallel to the first one on the last goal. You have great support services for technology, main streets, manufacturing, the traditional economic development. Make sure that you're getting those same level of support for ag and agritourism initiatives. That had fewer specific goals, objectives, action steps attached to it, but kind of ongoing, keeping your agritourism vital. Any comments on goal 4?
You know, I got a note here. The first one, I just wrote down, what are those folks supposed to do?
I'll let you take that one, Victoria.
And you know, if we know what it is, then maybe it'd be helpful to suggest a couple things. That was my comment on that one.
Right. What I would envision is that,
Seems like one, Victoria, I'm sorry, but I seen like one just led into 2, to be quite honest with you.
yeah,
Right, so I'm not sure why they were separate necessarily, if they're meant, you know, if it was meant to work that way. Go ahead, sorry.
no, you're absolutely right. And that's important input. Provided that you do move ahead with the board, the AFAC, then they would be the ones to convene a temporary committee to take on the task of reaching out to the organizations, establishing the relationships. I mean, we provided pretty comprehensive, although not completely comprehensive inventory, but those organizations should be reached out to. That's something that a separate committee can be tasked with to do that, and then it ends when the outreach is complete.
Okay. It seems like a fair bit of this would probably fall under the folks that we have here working on economic development issues. So I guess I would suggest that maybe our economic development department be added to some of these. Most specifically, I wrote something down on number 4 and 5, just adding them to that list of participants or partners.
Sure.
Good catch.
Okay.
Okay. Fifth and final goal. Kind of that awareness with the public, promote the connection between farms and food, farms and secondary income, and increasing the awareness of the non-farm public of what ag is in the town and what farmers do. Trying to build public support for the agricultural sector in the town. So number 1, Eat Local campaign, creating markets for locally grown produce. Number 2, finding institutional buyers such as schools, hospitals, other entities that do bulk purchasing, again, to help create markets for locally grown foods. May want to seek a partner with business experience to manage this specific objective. Maintain the ag page that you have on the town's website as an ongoing source of information. I think we add the social media here too. Work with the entities that are out there with programs to strengthen the information they offer on local farmers markets. Ensure that the farmers markets in Amherst are listed on the New York State Farmers Markets Federation listing. They have a program of listing where the farm markets are. Make sure that ones that we have that are large enough, not just the guy selling tomatoes on his front yard, but George's and all the others are listed. Work to keep up the community supported agricultural CSAs in Amherst. Do a public information campaign to educate residents on the benefits of farming in Amherst, and build local support for the agriculture. Work with Cornell University Small Farms Program and Farmland for New Generation programs to link residents and local farmers and do that education piece. Create this one-stop source of information that Victoria was just talking about, where you've got 19 different programs offered by 21 different agencies. Not everybody, like trying to find out where to get your COVID shot. You have no idea where to go. So that you have that kind of central clearinghouse of information. And then getting into the more physical, identify and secure physical space such as underutilized commercial kitchens, and develop a management plan where you could have those kind of co-located people that want to do programs but don't have, we've talked about this at the last meeting, to help kind of do micro enterprise type startups. Then moving on to the next page, getting information on agricultural education programs in regional school districts, so that the school children learn about ag. That's not necessarily happening anymore. And then promote youth interest in agriculture through programs like 4-H and those kinds of things. Any comments on goal 5? Okay, this isn't your last, I know that this was a compressed time frame given the short deadlines we're working on. So if you think of things, make your comments to Roberta. Our next steps will be to compile all of these chapters that you've looked at into a single PDF that you can then see a completed product for this.
Yes, and Ellen, I plan to print out a copy for each member and send it to their mailing address. beginning of next week latest, so that everyone has something. Whoops.
Are we,
Dan, do you have
wait,
something?
are we making revisions to that before you send it out
Yes.
to the committee? Okay.
Yeah,
You'll make
so
a
there, and somebody mentioned some graphics and photographs and things like that, so.
Yeah,
That'll
don't
come
know.
later. That's
Yeah,
coming,
that-
graphics and photographs are coming later.
Yeah, well, our idea, Dan, is that we want to get agreement all the way through to the town board approval of the content, well, not town, but through the ag board approval of the text. And then once we have a final approved for prime time document, then we would put in the graphics and such.
so not for
Okay.
Jeff.
Not for Jeff, he doesn't need to see the photos and everything.
So similar to the other conversation we were having about the meeting, let's talk about when we push a completed draft to the committee. We can kind of talk about that offline. Roberta, did you still want to get this group together, give them an opportunity to talk about the entire draft prior to the
Yes.
end of this month or prior to the public meeting?
Yes, that is the objective. We would like to meet one last time with the committee, the town, in order to discuss the whole draft one last time, one last push before we give it back to the Wendell and the consultants. And that would be prior to giving it to Jeff Kehoe.
Okay,
I have the proposed dates up on the screen, and Roberta, Dan, we can get together offline and we can finalize all these dates. But this is really what Roberta and I had talked to Ellen, like the outline we had really talked about as far as next steps.
Yeah.
so
we have-
just I know we're going to lock into a time frame here or try to do that.
Yeah, let me get that line up.
What were there, Roberta, were there dates that you had in mind that we
Yeah,
could?
let me just look here. Oh, yeah, here we go. So let's see what I show here. I put it. Yeah, so I had, depending on when we do the public meeting, which, I know we said it has to be no earlier than the 27th. We could do it between the 27th, May 3rd, that week, up to May 10th. We could have a second meeting with the committee.
To be fair, we will need some revision time in there. So I
Yes.
think we need to regroup and make sure that meeting is happening at a time that will allow us to get our revisions done.
Okay, I also
So
put
we
down
need to
April
have-
20th. I did put down April 20th as a date. But, we can certainly talk about if that's a good date as well.
Oh, why don't we do it? The other thing I guess we could do is, Bob, I don't know if you want to take a poll of the folks on the committee, but what do folks think about the document you've seen so far? I mean, we've gone through each of the chapters over the last couple of months. These are the final ones. We're still open to having some comments back from the committee in the next day or two, I guess, right, Roberta? Whatever,
Yep.
on these two
So,
chapters.
so you're saying, do we really need another meeting? Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
do
Well, no.
people feel like it's necessary?
I say no.
Okay, I mean,
Okay.
would you
If
want
I
us
was going to take a poll, I think we're done.
Okay, all I'm suggesting is, do people want to see the whole thing together in one document one more time? Or are people comfortable with where we are? You've seen all the chapters, you've seen everything, we talked about it. And I understand what you said. I don't know if you want to see what the temperature of the rest of the folks are, or is rather, and we'll make a determination based on that.
Sure. Let's open it up. What's other people think?
I'm
mean,
good.
Rick or Mike or
So,
Mike.
Roberta, did I understand you're gonna send out a hard copy of a draft to us all?
I will, as soon as there's something, till we're at a point where we're going to be sending it off. Then yes, I will send you all a hard copy by mail.
And is that something that can be commented on and amended?
Well, that was my original thought, but if you guys don't want to do another meeting, it would be, I'd have to do some sort of hard deadline, for the comments and whatnot.
Sure.
You could
I
certainly
think that's a
have
good idea.
comments. You can certainly have comments,
Absolutely,
With-
yeah.
just we can't do 5 different iterations of making revisions.
Well,
We
just
want
put a timeline on it when you
time
need them. That's all. put a
Yeah.
timeline when you need them. And you're right, Ben, you're right. Anybody who wants to make some comments, do that by a certain time frame. Once you get them in, if you feel they're warranted, make the revision and go with it.
I mean, I know that sometimes it's just easier to see everything just in a physical form all at once, kind of go beginning to end.
Email it to us.
Well, I'm going to physically copy it. I mean, we don't have the capacity to email it, believe it or not. So
Well,
I
okay.
have to send it
Well,
physically.
we'll get you a hard copy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm there more than enough, so it's not a problem for me, but I hear it,
Yeah.
I get it. I'm just saying that I'm just concerned with, remember the group that's on this call and their industry and the demands they have on them. That's why. And I'm not trying to speak for others if you
Well,
think
it'll certainly
differently.
be posted. I mean, I don't know if I could post I could post a draft once it's fairly set. So it'd be right before we send it to Jeff Kehoe. I could put the post on the website.
I mean,
as a
I know
draft.
you're trying to be gracious enough to say, look at, you know what, one more time, everyone take a look at it. I'm just saying that I'm sensitive to people's times and their commitment to their business. That's all.
Of course.
So
I
if we can
understand
try
that.
to accommodate both, great. Otherwise, I mean, let the professionals take their comments, finish the draft, rock and roll.
Agreed.
Who said that?
John O'Rourke.
That was John.
All right, Mr. Rourke.
Mike,
So
Rick, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective over here, I do think that we've had some pretty good discussion on things. I think we've covered a lot of the basics. There's not any glaring things that I think would kind of stand in our way. So I will say that going forward, it's only going to get busier for us. We'll have less and less time from now going through June. So I think looking over it and doing the meetings the last couple of months has been really helpful. I think any big changes, I think we've crossed most of those already. Just again, my opinion from my perspective.
no, that's good. Roberta, you can take roll call if you want.
No, that was just,
Rick, what do you think, Rick?
What are we voting on here? That,
We're not voting.
we're not voting.
We're kidding you, Rick.
Do you feel as if you've had ample time to look at this to the point where we can kind of make the changes we've talked about tonight or over the last several months and then push this on?
I would agree with that. I would still like to see a final draft, and there's some sections that I'd like to take another look at. Especially the areas relating to the purchase of farmland, designating how that land gets designated, what priorities and things of that sort.
So I guess we should talk about whether we're going to get to that point and the work that we've done thus far. And I would almost suggest that would be a discussion, maybe the ideas here, if it's not stated strongly enough or the way you think it ought to be, love to have a suggestion on a couple of those things related to that particular topic, if you would. I wonder if that's just not something that it's not going to get answered here, but it begins to be a question that's posed to the town board as we get through this process. And at the end, when the town board is asked to do something with it, there's a stronger statement that, on their behalf, maybe that they want to move forward with this and have the financial commitment to it. Does that
Yeah, I mean,
make sense?
that's fair enough. It is the town board ultimately that'll make that decision. So I guess that would be the process.
So, but I would ask, are we stating it correctly here amongst these action items? Is there something that needs to be stronger? And I would, I'd really love to see whether you have anything else you would suggest to make it that way, if that's the sentiment. And I'll just throw that out. And Roberta, I think we're going to be looking for folks to kind of get back to us sometime in the next few days or whatever, if they have any other comments on these chapters, in particular, chapter 7, the implementation side. Is that accurate?
Yes, I'd like to have everyone send me as soon as possible. End of the day, Monday even would be great. Obviously, I wouldn't not take anyone's other comments, but that would be a good time for us to give it back to Wendell to add in all their revisions from us, the town, as well as from the committee, and start getting the final drafts out. So that would be my ask, but So Monday, end of day.
That workable,
So
Rick?
for clarification, Roberta, you will get us those comments on Monday. When we'll make revisions based on what we've heard tonight, what we've heard from you, and get those, especially the implementation chapter and other chapters that there might be comments on, get those set. Are we issuing a full draft for review from the committee? I'm still
Well, that's what
not clear
I
on
think that's
that.
what we're discussing now. So
Yeah, I
to
don't
be
know.
clear, we're gonna take comments through Monday.
Yes, and so Tuesday you would
get
get,
them thereafter. And I think that's what we're trying to determine is whether we need another meeting to talk about the entire draft or not. And the sense I'm getting is that's not the case.
yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Rick. Does that give you enough time? Monday? If you were gonna put some extra thought into that.
We can give it a shot. I just would like the opportunity to look at a final draft, the whole thing all in
I
one
can still
package.
send a hard copy to you once the revisions have been made and, that's not a problem, Rick. And you can always call me,
Okay.
Dan,
Yes, I know
or
that.
Leanne.
But I want to make sure I understand. You'd like to have a crack at the whole thing before it goes to the state. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that what Roberta suggested before, she's gonna mail out a draft copy of the entire report. And, if that can't be done, I'll live with whatever the committee decides, but I would like an opportunity to look at the whole package at once. That's just my background in reading reports. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just want to make, if we need to capture whatever insights you have before it goes to the state, we just need to be mindful of that time.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I will try and, I had a couple things here that I will get to Roberta over the next couple of days, and they may be redundant, but I think some of them need to be emphasized a little bit more.
That's
And this-
fine, and we'll get you a copy when we get the entire thing together. I guess, is there anybody else that has a desire to have the full copy of this thing before it goes to the state, or should we kind of?
This is actually before we go to the public meeting.
Yeah, well, that's true
So
too.
this
yeah.
isn't your last, I mean, I don't want to have 10,000 nitpicky little, I want you to give
Yeah.
me anything that's you want changed, but
Yeah,
it's
by
not
Monday, yeah,
your
later day,
last
yeah.
bite at the apple.
Right.
Because we will have possibly some other revisions based on the public meeting. So we
Which-
could do another round of changes at that point. as long
Which the
as-
public meeting, to be clear, is we would want the committee to be there too.
Yes, yeah. But that's
So
a
that-
public
so that
meeting,
is
that's
kind
not
of another
committee
meeting.
But it's, not a committee meeting.
not
Doesn't
a
sound like
committee
we need another meeting of the committee before this thing goes
No.
to the public meeting, and that. I think that-
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that-
And you're right. And we're happy to
I agree,
support
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Roberta, that's certainly appropriate.
Yeah.
We'll definitely part of that meeting. Right.
Okay,
Sounds like a plan.
I have one last plug because some people have joined since I said it at the beginning of the meeting. I would love if you could send me pictures of farming activities, education activities, equipment, anything you're inspired by in the ag community, sunrises, sunsets, whatever you think. Obviously we have to be a little sensitive about putting people in, but let's just send me pictures. And if you have a bunch of pictures and you want me to send you a Dropbox link or something like that, just reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure I include that in the notes for tonight's meeting as a reminder for everyone. We really love to include some of those actual pictures. And if you want credit, we'll give you credit. Put your name right at the
Yeah.
bottom of it.
yeah, we'll give you a caption.
So yeah, let me know.
Okay.
I'm sure Bob will want to come, thank you, but I certainly want to thank you for your input and hanging in here and getting us all your comments and helping us make this a better report. I'll let you close, Bob.
Well, yeah, I thank everyone for their time. I know that certainly in the industry that you're in, your time is very demanding these days, so we thank you for that. And I think that what the committee's done and the hard work by that and the planning department and Ellen and Leanne and others, I'm sure that the end product will be something that we'll all be proud of and hopefully make a greater impact. And like anything else, the thing is, the people on this call tonight, I can speak personally. I mean, my family buys from a lot of you all the time, speaks very highly of, the guy in Transit Road, the guy over by the Thruway, and some others, they're always buying stuff from you folks. So thank you for that.